Thank you, Dr. Pehlivan, for your speech. Now I would like to invite our first keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Julia Luft, give her speech. She's a professor at the University of Georgia in the United States, editor of many international journals, has many publications, and also a member of many international organizations that relate to education. We are happy to have her here, and the presentation title will be At the Crossroad, New Direction for Science and Mathematics Teacher Professional Development. The speech will be about an hour. The first 40 minutes will be presentation, then we are going to take the question in the last 20 minutes. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Great, thank you. All right, I don't want to get too close to that. We're having a small problem with this. I guess we're good to go. All right, I'm going to turn this off. Okay, and actually, we're good. If you want, can I get you to push the buttons? Okay. So, thank you very much for the invitation today. I'm honored to be here. It's a return visit to Turkey. I was here in 2011 at ICERES and thoroughly enjoyed my time. And that was in Istanbul. And now I'm in southern Turkey, and it's wonderful to be here. So my talk today is about professional development. But before I get into this talk, what I want to do is give you a little information about where I come from. So I come from Athens, Georgia, which is in the southern part of the United States, and it's a long ways to Turkey. It's about 5,000 miles, 9,600 kilometers. It's too far to swim, so I had to fly. And when I tell people I'm from Athens, Georgia, they often look at me and say, no, you're from Athens, Greece, right? And I say, well, Greece and Athens have a lot. Greece and Athens, Georgia have a lot in common. We both have entertainment. We have the 40 Watt Club, which is many stars that have come from over the years. REM, Widespread Panic, the B-52s, more recently Pylon. Oops, go back. Oh, it's flipping. There we go. And the venue seats 150 people. In Greece, it seats 5,000 people. It's right outside of the Acropolis. It has the Athens Festival. And like Athens, Georgia, many notable people have been there. Frank Sinatra, Elton John, and Yanni. Athens, Georgia, and Athens, Greece also have columns in common. Whoops. We have, that's our arch, and you can only walk through the arch if you're a University of Georgia graduate. And just like, I think, the columns at the Parthenon, that there were rules at one time who could walk between them, but that's no longer true. But I think that the University of Georgia has a lot in common with Turkey. Now you can hit the next slide. And I want to give you a little background. So the University of Georgia was instated in 1785. It was the first public university in the United States. It was the first university that was open to anybody who wanted to apply to it. The University of Georgia, in the College of Education, has a mission to service learning. All of our students are required to do service activities and learning activities in the community. So much like Turkey, and much like Ataturk, who I admire dearly, he instilled a love of learning in Turkey. He created a lot of the educational system that we see today, and it's through a lot of his initiative that many great scholars have actually come and visited the U.S. And to this, we are grateful. So the love of learning is a big bond between the two of us. And learning is what I'm going to talk about today. So specifically, I'm going to talk about teacher learning and why we're at the crossroads. I'm going to talk about the professional development side of teacher learning. And in looking through the program, I noticed that there weren't a lot of sessions on professional development. There were some. So this is something that we need to give a lot of thought to. I'm going to cover a couple different topics. First, I'm going to talk about why professional development is important. I'm going to talk about what a typical professional development program is, what it should be, and how we're at the crossroads now, and where the future is. So to begin with, to arrive at the crossroads, we have to start somewhere. So we're going to start here. And that's why professional development is important and why we need to think about it and why it needs to be in everything that we do around math and science education. So I think the most important reason is that we're in a society that's emphasizing science and mathematics more than ever. So medicine is changing. We know now more in medicine than we've ever known. And new treatments are coming at us that use ways or approaches that may not be familiar to most people. And having a good science knowledge will allow us to understand the potential of those treatments. For instance, we're using viruses now in treating cancer. So viruses can activate DNA to actually use our own bodies to fight cancer. It's a tremendous step forward in the treatment of cancer. We also need to know about our environment, and that becomes really important. So what pesticides will we use? And Europe has been very good about this. There's been a lot of discussion about the neonicotinoids that are being used on crops that actually cause honeybees to die off. There's now policies in place where they're not allowed, and that's not true in the U.S. We still allow them. And for students who want to just enjoy science, there's the pursuit of the daily science phenomena. So we go with that. So the Large Hadron Collider, which is currently up and running, is looking for that connection between mass and energy. So science is important for our daily decisions. It's important for those who are interested in math and science. We know from the PISA scores, which you're all familiar with, the sample of 15-year-olds, and there's over 65 countries, some OECD, some not OECD, that the performance is widespread. There's a great variation. And when we look at science, we actually see the average is 501, and we see that there are a lot of countries that are below the average. And this is the concern in science, especially if we're going to have students who can meet some of the challenges in the future. So one of the more interesting analyses that's done in PISA is, I think, on the math side. And I really like this analysis. So PISA has levels of difficulties in its questions. Level 1 are very simple questions that don't require a lot of strategic thinking. They're very straightforward. As we go to level 6, the questions are more complex. They're phenomena that we encounter, and that phenomena we have to resolve why it's not working and go through a series of steps in order to understand them. When we look at this data, what it actually says is it says on the left side, that's the number of students who successfully achieved levels 1 and 2. If you look on the far right side of the column, that's the number of students who achieved the higher levels. So this graph is actually telling us, if you look at it generally, that more students struggle with attaining those very low levels of knowledge in math than at the higher levels. So in my world, and what I would envision, that we would have almost the reverse of this, that most students would achieve the higher levels on PISA. And I should add, I know there are problems with PISA, but I like a lot of the questions because they're embedded in societal issues and daily occurrences. And I think that is a good step in terms of looking at student knowledge. So, student knowledge is important, and what's really important is the teacher who works with that student. There are numerous studies, but this is probably one of my favorites, by Strong, Wards, and Grant. And what they did was they sampled a group of students, and then they looked at their scores on how the students changed over the span of a year. And they broke it down into quartiles. So you have students who are in the low, at the end of the year, who are in the low quartile, and then you have students at the end of the year who are at the high quartile. So you look at the left of that chart, it says roughly 41, and then the students in the low quartile went to 21, where the students in the high quartile went up to 50. So these researchers were really interested in why these students went to the high and the low quartile. And what they found out is when they went and looked at the classes, that there were significant differences in the highly effective teachers of the students in the higher quartile. And what they found was this. They found that they had better instructional delivery. So these teachers were actually promoting inquiry, giving students a chance to ask questions. They were giving students a chance to do inquiry and a chance to problem solve. They also found that they were assessing student knowledge. They were looking at what students knew, and they were taking that up and trying to make sense of that in terms of making instructional decisions. And they also looked at the learning environment. They found that highly effective teachers who were promoting student learning actually managed the classroom environment better and had less off-task behavior. And finally, they had found that teachers where students were performing were caring for the students, they were enthusiastic for the content, and they were professionally active. So all of these factors were found to be significantly different, or different than the teachers of the low-performing students. So we know that teaching makes a difference. So you're thinking probably, well, how do we support teachers then? And professional development is the link. And this is a very important study. It was done by Supinitz and Turner in 2000. And what they did was they followed 3,000 teachers across the country, and they surveyed them. And they were interested in how teachers changed their orientations towards teaching science and math in the classroom. And specifically, they were interested in, did they create a culture of exploration, and were they supporting students to engage in this exploration? So kind of two dimensions. Are they teaching an inquiry, and are they using inquiry and problem solving, and are they cultivating it in the classroom? And what they found when they looked at that data, so they're going to look against what they're reporting and in the number of hours of professional development. And what they found was as teachers engaged in more professional development, more of these behaviors became apparent in the classroom. So they were certainly seeing that. And they actually said that most teachers need between 80 to 100 hours of professional development in order to ensure that they can actually be effective with their students. So this is really important work. So now let's take this one more step further, and let's connect it back to student achievement. So we know that professional development is really important with student achievement. And Carla Johnson, a colleague and friend of mine, did this study, and what she did was she had 2 schools. And in one school, they had all of the math and science teachers engaged in a professional development environment. Throughout the year, the teachers were meeting and learning how to engage in sciences inquiry and how to enact problem solving. So they did this professional development for for 3 years, and during that time, they were monitoring the student progress. And they were going to see if the teachers who were involved in this really active professional development were doing or supporting student achievement. And they, of course, had a control school which was not having any of the professional development opportunities. So if you look at this table, or this figure, go back, if you look at this figure, you can see that the intervention school, where they were having teachers work together, over time, the students from grades 6, 7, and 8 improved in their student achievement scores, and this is really important. Again, it shows that when teachers are engaged in professional development, they can actually impact student learning. So just to connect the dots back for you again, student learning is the most important thing, the student, and teachers make a difference in what students do, and the most important way we can support teachers is through professional development. This is just non-negotiable, so teachers need to engage in professional development. All right, so we started the journey. So what does typical professional development look like? Well, if we actually look at what kind of professional development is happening, not only in the US, but around the world, we see that often professional development teachers are told to show up for the professional development program. It's not based on what teachers need to know. The teachers are required to be there. They sit for, like you're doing right now, for 6 to 8 hours. I will not be talking for 6 to 8 hours. And they have to listen. And then they're given, go back. They're given sometimes materials that they can take back to their classroom and use. And often the evaluation for this is just when they leave. Did they enjoy it and did they learn? So these types of professional development endeavors are very short term, they're very episodic, they're not in any coherent manner, they're just what people need to learn based on what somebody has decided. So it could be learning new curriculum, it could be learning how to use a new type of apparatus that's at the school, it could be learning how to use a copier, it could be learning how to mark attendance. Any of these would be some forms of professional development. In science and math, it might be learning about inquiry or problem solving. But overall, these are very short-term events. So Banalauer does this annual survey and he looks across at how teachers are perceiving professional development. What we find in the US, and this is what we have, is that most teachers do not engage in at least 35 hours of professional development. This table shows you the number of teachers who are engaging in professional development over 3 years. And the top are science teachers and math teachers. It's broken out by elementary, middle school, and high school. So in our own country, we have a very low participation in professional development. That 35 hours is roughly 4 or 5 8-hour days. It's not very much if we're going to impact the learning of students. And I think that's important. When we look across the globe, we see that this is actually very similar. So when we're on our journey to the crossroads, we've started, we're going along, and then all of a sudden we run into an information station, right? I love this. When I travel, I often run into information stations and I get really important information that I need that will help me along my journey. And the information I'm going to share with you is how professional development should look. So we know that teacher learning is important in order to support student learning, and we know that typical professional development isn't as good as it could be. What should professional development look like? And I'm going to share some of the research in this area. So one of the important studies that we've had is by Garrett, Porter, Desmond, Bierman, and Mion, and you may have seen this. And what they did was they looked at 3,500 teachers, again, across the U.S., and what they wanted to do was find out what type of professional development programs impacted teachers' knowledge and practices, and that was the outcome. So they took the surveys from the teachers and they ran a regression. And so we see knowledge and practices, because that's what we want at the end. That's what's going to make a difference in student learning. And they wanted to see what, through a regression, what did that. And if we look, they found that there were core features that every professional development had to have, program had to have. It had to have a focus on knowledge. It which meant that it had to have some type of knowledge at the forefront. So in math, it could be understanding problem solving or algebra, or in science, it could be understanding ecosystems and sciences inquiry. They also found that there had to be active learning. That meant that teachers had to construct their knowledge, they had to have opportunities to engage in the phenomena and make sense of it, and they found that there had to be coherence, which meant that the activities in the professional development were structured in a way that were sequential and that they layered on top of each other. So the professional development just wasn't a bunch of disconnected ideas. When they went back to that last regression, they found that there were certain features. That is, professional development had to happen over time. So it had to be over a span of a year to 2 years, and it had to have some number of hours, which would have been, again, they projected the same threshold of 80 hours in order to learn practices, and that, this is where my eyesight is giving out, and that there had to be collective participation, right? Yeah, and that's where the entire group, the schools are working together in order to schools are working together in order to support their learning. So teachers would come together and talk about what they were teaching and how they could teach it better. All right, next slide. So that really set the stage for a lot of studies that were to come. We found that Wilson and Byrne, right around that same time, said that professional development was often episodic. And it was not at all about teacher learning. It was about what the teachers wanted to attend or were told to attend. Hewson, in the Handbook for Research and Science Education, actually pointed out that we need to know more about what happens in professional development and the structure of programs. Garrett's telling us what should be there, but few studies report that. Borko, Jacobs, and Collier in their International Encyclopedia said that knowledge has to be on the forefront of professional development. We have to start attending to that, and that can be the knowledge of students as well as the knowledge of teachers. And finally, in the review that we just had published in the Handbook of Research and Science Education, we found that it's really important to bring student learning and teacher learning to the forefront. And this hasn't been done at all. So when we look across those studies, we see that there are some really common themes. And one of them is that content is critical. And that means in science, we need to have professional development that's about doing science and also about the content areas of science. And that could be learning about chemistry, physics, and biology, and it's learning about the processes and now the practices of science. In mathematics, there's a huge push for learning of problem solving, number sense making. These are really important in understanding algebra, which we know is incredibly important as young children, in order for young children to advance. So content knowledge has to be embedded in the professional development. We can't not have that. We know that content knowledge can also incorporate pedagogical content knowledge, and this is a new twist for us. And pedagogical content knowledge is a unique blend of the content that we know and what we know about learners and what we know about the conditions that they're in. So if I'm a science teacher, I'm making very specific choices about how my learners are going to understand chemical reactions based on what they might know previously and based on what experiences they may have had in their own community. This is the unique knowledge that we find that science teachers have. And math teachers, although they call it MKT in mathematics, so there's the parallels. Pedagogical content knowledge is developed in one of two ways. There's several educators who think it's actually an integrated knowledge base, and on the other side, some people think that it's developed separately, like you develop each of those knowledge bases separately and then bring them together. Even though there's two different camps about how it develops, we are pretty much all in agreement that pedagogical content knowledge develops as teachers work with children. So my own research has looked at pedagogical content knowledge. We're really interested in this, and it's something that we've documented. We've definitely seen these types of knowledge bases growing in teachers or being constructed when they work in classrooms because of professional development. The two that we've often been interested in are student learning and instruction. So what do teachers learn about doing inquiry and taking notice of students' ideas while they're doing inquiry? I'll talk a little bit more about this later. So what we know, another area that we know is that teachers change. And they have different degrees of change when they're involved in professional development. Just because everybody's there doesn't mean that everybody comes out knowing the same thing. So if we look at this data, which is from a study in 2001, you'll see that, did it go? Oh. There it is. So it says in the bottom, it's circling experienced teachers. And what you see is that experienced teachers are divided in their abilities to think traditionally or towards constructivism. There's a continuum. Even though the teachers even participated in the professional development, they still are a continuum. So they're not coming out with what we hope they would, which would be a good understanding of inquiry. And if we look again at the next piece, right here, we can actually see that there's a difference between teachers. So new teachers learn differently than experienced teachers. And over the course of a year, which this professional development program was going on and teachers were working collaboratively, new teachers were actually learning in ways we didn't want them to learn, which was unfortunate, but we learned something from this. So teachers are changing in different ways, and this is really important when we design professional development programs. So the other thing that's really important is there has to be coherence. So we know that Subinitz and Turner talked about the importance of coherence, as did Garrett et al. And so we know that professional development has to be structured in order to build on ideas. But it's also important that teacher professional development be something that teachers can use. That means it has to be coherent with the standards that are guided by the country, and that it has to be coherent with the practices that are used in the school. So in our work, if I want to support inquiry, it's really important that I know if the school is actually going to want inquiry in the school. So I may not be able to get very nice notions of students identifying researchable questions. I may have to have an inquiry in the school that is just allows students to look at data and make explanations. That's a modified type of doing inquiry, albeit still inquiry. So taking into account what the school will allow. And finally, we know that collaboration is important. And what we know is that teachers are not isolated. Teachers have to work with one another. Thank you. They have to work with one another. And it's really important. And the teachers have to work with university faculty, and this isn't common. So in this project, and that's me, and that's my chemistry colleague, we work with a group of, I think there's like 13 teachers there in their schools. And this is the only time they've actually in 3 years been at the university. We're often out of the schools helping learn how to do new forms of science, or trying to advance their science knowledge, or trying to support them to try new ways or new instructional formats. So we know collaboration is really important, and the teachers often work together to talk about what they're learning. So we really instilled this also in the programs we're doing. So that takes us to the crossroads, right? We know that student learning is important. It's supported through teachers. We know that there's some pieces about professional development that are essential. And we have to do things differently. So let me give you some examples of what I think our choices are for the future. Which way do we go? So one of the programs that I've been involved with is for new teachers, the very new teachers that just graduated from teacher preparation programs. And we often, as you know, in teacher preparation, spend a lot of time helping new teachers, but all of a sudden we release them to schools. And at the time when they need their education faculty and their science faculty the most, we're not there to help them. And this project takes it a step further by saying that we will be there to help you. So in this program, that's actually a scientist working with one of the new teachers, helping him to use inquiry in his classroom. We're actually out with them in the classroom, talking with them about how they're going to do inquiry. And on this picture, you actually see the teachers meeting after a week of trying inquiry and talking about how it went and how it didn't go. And I'm taking a picture, so I'm not there, but we talk about these things a lot and try to figure out new ways to do it. And it's just for new teachers who we have to build their skills. So we set up an experiment a few years ago. We actually we put this model of supporting new teachers in the sciences with deep science talk, and we tested it against just schools who provided their teachers a mentor against schools who did nothing for their teachers. So we have 3 treatments that we're really interested in. And our hypothesis was that having a lot of talk about science, teaching science in their first year, that normally doesn't occur, could be a really good thing for these teachers and could impact what they do and what they know. So in our experiment, we took a look at the pedagogical content knowledge. And there were 2 categories we were interested in, and this is category 1. We were really interested in how the new teachers were improving their knowledge of students. And what we found was, with our help, there was significant difference in how they were looking at students and taking up students' ideas. And that's quite different than the general group that had no support from that had very limited support from their schools, or that they came with no education background. So having somebody with these teachers in their first years made a significant difference in how they were thinking about students. But that's one piece of it. What were they doing in the class? And if we look at the data, so the 1s mean the first year and 2s mean the second year. And if we look at the data, in the middle is the science-specific group, and we see, right, that discussion was a prevailing practice. And we don't really have that in the other 2 categories. So these teachers are actually talking to their students in more ways than any of the other groups. We also found that the teachers in the science-specific group were doing more labs and investigations in the other group. So everything that we wanted and knew to be important in science was happening with these new teachers. And I want to say that goes against the general trend of believing that new teachers can't teach. In fact, we know that they can teach better and in more powerful ways often than experienced teachers. The other program I'm involved in is a leadership development program, trying to build again on some of these principles where teachers all learn differently or have different needs in the program. This program is a 3-year program, and what it does is it meets in the summer. We've selected a group of highly talented teachers who are interested in being leaders in the science education community. And what we try to do is instill in them a vision for what leadership would look like. So in the summer, we work on their leadership skills, and then over the year, they work with their colleagues at their regional sites to build their leadership capacity. And what we see, which I think is great, is after 3 years, the teachers themselves find that they're able to be more active in their school and in their region nationally in terms of advocating for science as inquiry. And this is huge, because often teachers don't have a voice, so we're helping these people to actually take a really strong position to move the discussion ahead. And then we also find that these teachers become leaders in helping their colleagues to learn about science. So again, thinking differently about how we have to support teachers. One of the most important ways that we can do professional development, which is taking us globally, is lesson study. And I can't say enough about this. It came to light with the TEMS report when we did the video analysis of the different countries down in Japan, was using this. This was actually incredible in supporting teacher learning. And in lesson study, as you know, teachers actually work collaboratively to plan lessons, teach them, and then they go and watch each other. So classrooms have groups of teachers watching a lesson happen, and then they debrief. And so this powerful form of professional development looks like this. The teachers meet, they plan the lesson, they elect one person to teach it, the teacher teaches it, all of the other teachers are in the classroom watching it. Afterwards, they debrief, they meet, they talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of the lesson, and then they say, what would we do next? Powerful, powerful learning for teachers to work collaboratively around student ideas and to think about what curriculum should look like. And if there was ever a study that told us that this was the important thing to do, it's Heller. The study came out in 2012. It's probably one of my favorite studies that deals with professional development. She looked at 3 conditions. She had teachers in a group that they were just engaged in metacognitive practices. She had another group where they were looking at students' ideas and trying to plan what to do. And then she had a third group where the teachers were actually looking at videos of classroom practice and trying to extract from that. In those 3 conditions, all of the teachers improved their content knowledge. But what became really important was in the condition where they were studying student work, where they're looking at student work, we find that students' explanations are better and they actually persist longer. The quality of student work was enhanced by looking at student work. It's a great study. So, that's kind of where we're at and we need to go. So what are the new directions? And what I'm really excited to see was at this conference, all the presentations about technology. And that is the new direction. And the other keynote speakers are definitely talking about this, so I think that's lovely. We need to work more with technology, and this is my pitch. So it's here, and it is taking us all by storm. We all have cell phones, we have iPads, we have mobile devices, we're on Twitter, we're on all these things. And we need to think about how to use these to support teacher learning, because that's what's going to support student learning. And this is the challenge. My colleague, April Lumen, is doing just this. And what she's done is she's got teachers blogging about their experiences as teachers. And as they're blogging, they're starting to learn more about their practice. It's almost the metacognitive piece that Helen was talking about. She hasn't quite figured out how to get teachers to blog about student learning, but I think that's coming. Some of the more forward things that I think are interesting is this is a web portal that's set up for new teachers anywhere in the country. If you're a new teacher, you can log on, you're assigned a mentor in your content area, and you can work with that mentor either individually or with another set of friends or in a collaborative group, or you can actually access resources. So it's a powerful tool to help new teachers. And what we find is that the teachers who are using this most are the teachers who are in rural areas in the U.S. who don't have access to good professional development, and the teachers who are in high urban areas where people can't be there to support them all the time. So this is just changing the face of how we think about professional development. At the National Science Teachers Association, where I was a research director, this is what we're doing right now, and they are working on a way to actually monitor teacher knowledge. And so, almost like competency-based testing. So they're taking a measure on what teachers know as teachers engage in their website, so they can go to what they call learning objects. They take the test, and the test reports back to them what they know, the limits of what they don't know. And in their own personal portfolio then, it tells the teacher if they have good content knowledge, they get a green light. If they have good knowledge about content pedagogy, teaching the pedagogy, they get a different color. And then if they know about assessment or technology or even student learning. And based on, you roll that over just a bit, you can see it. You can see the green, yellow, and red. That tells them the areas that they need to improve. So this is where we're going with professional development, the idea that we can actually be personalized to help teachers develop their practice in really powerful ways. So we're at the crossroads, and we have to decide what we're going to do next. And I think it's pretty clear. So flip. We know a few things, right? So first off, we know that Athens is a lot like Athens, but Athens is really also a lot like Turkey. It's just a cheer, you guys. Yay! And we also know there's a significant link between teacher quality and student learning. So we have to help our teachers in terms of supporting student learning. And we also know that teachers need to continue to build their knowledge and practices teacher professional development. And those knowledge thresholds, the amount of teacher professional development they need is not small. It's upwards of 80 hours, and that's over a year to 2 years. That's a lot. We also know that teacher professional development should have a focus on student learning, teacher knowledge and practice, and it should also allow for collaborative learning, and it needs to be coherent. That means it has to be coherent with structured and also with the community in which it's sitting. And finally, we know that we really have to draw on new ideas, or the research that's coming out in order to design a professional development program that's just on the forefront that supports all of our teachers. So, in summary, we've arrived at the crossroads, and we can either continue to do what we've always done, or we can draw upon what we know and take a new path. And just in closing, I just want to just give you this last phrase. I love this phrase. I think it's great. Teachers are the one and the only people who can save nations, and it's our job to work with them to support them. Thank you. I don't know. That's lovely. And how many people in here are university professors? And how many are university professors in education? And how many are university professors in science? All right, that's great. Now, how many university professors are out in the classrooms of teachers at least a couple times a year? All right. And how many teachers have had a university professor in their classroom helping them teach a lesson? Okay, I have an assignment for you university professors, those teachers that raise their hand, to find them and let them teach. I think this is where we're going, so hopefully. Anyway, are there any questions at all? Yeah. Okay, yeah, so the question is, to make sure that I hear this right, new teachers are different than experienced teachers, right? And how do new teachers learn differently than experienced teachers, right? Is that?
Yeah, yes, and the second question is like, do you have any scientific explanation for why they learn?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So first off, yeah, teachers learn differently. So new teachers learn differently than experienced teachers. New teachers are just forming their ideas. So their beliefs, and we know this, they have core beliefs and they have peripheral beliefs, and those beliefs are being molded differently as they interact with kids in the classroom. This is a great, versus experienced teachers have interacted with kids enough that they have those core beliefs and they're very set. They're more difficult to change. So that's an example of beliefs. And in knowledge, we know this is true too. New teachers are just learning how to use inquiry. It's very difficult for them because there are multiple decisions that they have to make. And it's very difficult to make those decisions. And they haven't really worked through or developed a strong core of practices that they can use. In the US, we're really leaning towards having new teachers learn 4 or 5 things really well that they can transfer into the classroom and use those pretty readily right from the start. So new teachers are building their practices, and that's pretty much, we agree with that, and experienced teachers have different practices. So the scientific explanation, I think, and there might be different ways to approach this, I would certainly approach it through the practice of expert-novice studies, which have been done by David Berliner. He looked at how experts and novices, how their knowledge develops in different ways. And we know that expertise, a big sign of expertise, is the ability to transfer practices to new novel situations. But underlying the expert-novice studies is the process of constructivism. So that conceptual change, theory of conceptual change, the teachers are having concepts and they have ideas, and those are modified in an ongoing way as they interact with certain phenomena. So I would draw on those two data pieces. I don't want to get into a discussion about conceptual change and constructivism, but I think those are really have a lot of explanatory power for how teachers learn. I don't know if there are any other questions. Yeah. Are we talking about, is it TPAC?
No, not just normal technology knowledge.
So I looked at how technology is used. How technology is used in professional development. You know, we did, right. I think this is, I looked at it. I looked at my new teachers and how they use technology. I don't think this is what you're asking me, but we had 120 teachers that I followed for 5 years. And in that, we went and observed those teachers 4 times a year And we documented their classroom practice in 5-minute increments. It was a huge undertaking. And so we have a data sheet of like 17,000 cells. And so what I did with that data sheet is I went back and queried the kinds of technology that they're using. And what we're finding is in our schools, those new teachers, they're not using technology in powerful ways. That's probably what you know. And we find that resources, just having access to technology is huge. A lot of teachers don't have it. And then they're not providing good professional development. So what happens is teachers have said, oh, we want you to use this graphing calculator. And they're given a graphing calculator, and they're given 8 hours of professional development, but they don't see how it interfaces with their class. So it's not embedded or coherent, so there's a real problem with that. So we do have a study where we look specifically at how many teachers will use technology. Again, it's not been taken up as well as we would hope. It's a good question. It's an important question, because technology is there, right? Kids are on their phones, they're on Twitter, and we ignore that. We need to think about how to embed that into daily practice.
Okay.
I have heard the teachers in the United States, and some of them, they didn't have an access to technology.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked you. Thank you for the explanation.
Great. Yeah.
In your speech, you encouraged some of the university professors to support teachers in schools, am I right?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think that would there be any resistance from the school teachers in terms of, like, could they think that many of the university professors working on theoretical level while they are working on hands-on with students? And so what I'm essentially wondering that while would there be any resistance between the university professors and teachers in the school while working together?
So let me make sure I got the question right. Are you, so you want to know why university people should work with teachers in the school? Or?
No, actually, I was wondering would there be any resistance between the university professors and the school teachers while they are working together?
That's a great question. I think there's more resistance to university professors going out into schools. You know, I don't, and it's a great question. So we find a couple things when we look at the research on this. So university professors need to be working with teachers, and they need to be in classrooms for a lot of reasons. Teachers have amazing knowledge, and we need to tap that knowledge. That's one reason. The other reason is that university professors have different access to different kinds of knowledge bases that can be useful for teachers. So collectively, these two minds can make a better learning environment. Now, is there resistance? I don't think the question is so much as resistance. I think there are two issues. One, there's the evaluation criteria by which university faculty are judged. So university faculty often aren't encouraged to go into classrooms and they're not rewarded for it. And I think that's something that has to change. But the other thing is that sometimes university faculty don't know how to talk to teachers. And they come in and they think they know everything and they think they're good with kids and the teachers are like, you don't know this. And so we find that there's a disconnect between university faculty and teachers in terms of working with teachers, right? They just don't know that. So the resistance, it's not so much a resistance as it can be a mismatch of knowledge, skills, and abilities. I don't know if does that make sense? It's important though. I mean, if it's all about learning, we've all got to be in it together.
I'm going to take one more question.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor. Related to the question that we have now, we know that teachers in classrooms, teachers in elementary, middle, or high school, most of the time you hear that maybe they complain on different things. Let's say 3 factors: the timing of professional development, the topics that they take, And the third one, the person who delivers that professional development. So how can we minimize this complaint or how to make effective professional development?
That's a great question.
Yeah, we need to listen to teachers.
Yeah,
I think the key to making really effective professional development is, number one, giving teachers an opportunity to work together so they can collaborate because they know a lot. And
Thank you so much for your attending. And there will be a coffee break, and then the session will start at 4. And then I enjoy the conference. Thank you so much.